My sister treated me like unpaid childcare, so I showed her how costly family obligation really gets. She dumped her daughter at my door in the dead of winter. Now she's got restraining orders, lost custody, and I've got the only thing that matters, my life back. They say family is supposed to have your back, but no one warns you what to do when family pushes you into a corner and calls it love. My name is Amanda Holt. I'm 32 years old and I live in Seattle. I work as a finance analyst at a mid-size firm downtown. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it. I have my little condo in Ballard, my routines, and my own life. Or at least I used to. It started on a Thursday night. I had just finished working late and was halfway through microwaving leftover curry when the buzzer rang. I didn't even have to ask who it was. Only one person in my life shows up unannounced with zero shame. Clarice. I opened the door, and there she stood, high heels, perfect blowout, a MacBook tucked under one arm and a tightly folded spreadsheet in the other. Don't tell me you're still eating those weird Trader Joe's meals, she said by way of hello, stepping inside like she owned the place. Hi, Clarice, I said flatly. She dropped her things on my kitchen island, didn't even glance at my mess of a living room. I've got it all mapped out. We'll go over the logistics together. Before I could ask what it was, she unfolded the spreadsheet. The top of the document read, Julia support coverage schedule, Q3 and Q4. Julia, her daughter, my 4-year-old niece. You'll have her nights and weekends, she said, already pointing to the colored blocks. Starting this Saturday. Holidays are obviously a given. I mean, you're not flying anywhere this year, are you? Clarice, I said, blinking. What is this? She looked up like I had asked her what color the sky was. It's the schedule. You said you wanted to help, remember? Don't be difficult, Amanda. I'm in the middle of a divorce and I have board meetings stacked through November. I hadn't said I wanted to help. I said, let me know if you need anything in the same vague, polite way people say, hope you're well in emails. Not as a legal contract for permanent childcare. You're asking me to be a full-time nanny, I said. Unpaid, she added, laughing like that made it charming. But hey, your family. Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone and started typing. An alert pinged on mine 30 seconds later. LinkedIn. Clarice had posted a photo of Julia and me from last Christmas. Me crouched beside her with reindeer antlers on my head, mid-laugh. The caption read, so grateful for my sister Amanda, who has graciously stepped up to care for Julia during this time. Her unwavering support means the world. Couldn't do it without her #family-first, #sister-goals. She tagged me. My boss follows me on LinkedIn. So does half my team. Clarice, take this down. She just smiled. Why? Everyone's so touched. Dad even commented already. My stomach dropped. Sure enough, within minutes, there it was, my father's comment. Proud of you, Amanda. A real family woman. Sacrifices like this define character. Your mother would be so proud. I hadn't even known he still used LinkedIn. My aunt chimed in too. Truly selfless. Not many women would do what you're doing. I stared at the screen, heat crawling up my neck. You lied, I said. Clarice shrugged. It's not a lie. You are supporting me. Besides, now everyone knows. You wouldn't want to disappoint Dad, would you? That's how she does it, not with threats, not with yelling, but with implication. With audience. She doesn't ask. She announces. And then she dares you to undo the story in front of everyone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw her laptop across the room. Instead, I nodded slowly. Fine, I said, my voice tight. She smiled triumphant. I knew I could count on you. I'll drop her off Friday after school. She left in a blur of perfume and heels. The curry was cold by the time I remembered it. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out when exactly I became the reliable one. The one everyone praises in public and exploits in private. I thought about Julia's tiny voice, the way she clings to me every time I visit. And I wondered, is that how they trap you? Not with guilt, but with love that isn't yours to begin with? I didn't say no. And that was my first mistake. I'd been planning that pitch for 3 weeks. It was for a FinX startup we were trying to partner with, big money, high stakes. My firm had finally trusted me to lead a presentation solo. I wore my favorite navy blazer, got in early, even brought backup printouts in case the screen glitched. By the time the investors filed into the conference room, I had my game face on. Good morning, everyone. I'm Amanda Holt, senior finance analyst here. That's when my cell buzzed in my blazer pocket. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, the receptionist appeared at the door looking confused. Sorry to interrupt, she said, leaning in. There's someone downstairs asking for you. Says it's urgent. I stepped out, teeth clenched. Who is it? She handed me a sticky note. Clarice says she has a massage appointment and needs you to watch Julia for an hour. What? I rushed to the lobby. There she was, Clarice in oversized sunglasses, athleisure, and the kind of smug smile reserved for women who think emergency means they'll be 10 minutes late for cucumber water. Julia stood next to her, clutching a stuffed turtle and looking half asleep. What are you doing? I hissed. I'm in the middle of a pitch. Clarice waved me off. It's just for a little while. My therapist said I need to prioritize my body. Deep tissue trauma work, she calls it. You couldn't get a sitter? You are the sitter, she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You said you'd help. No, Clarice. I said I'd watch her nights and weekends. This is my job. She looked me up and down, unimpressed. Oh, come on. You're not in surgery. You're in a meeting. It can wait. and just like that she shoved Julia's little backpack into my arms. Then she was gone, heels clicking against tile, one hand adjusting her ponytail, the other already swiping on her phone. Julia blinked up at me. "Can we get a snack?" I stood there frozen. My coworkers passed by, glancing curiously at the toddler beside me. A partner from the accounting side gave me a tight smile before ducking into the elevator. I took Julia upstairs, sat her in a swivel chair in the hallway outside the conference room, gave her my iPad, prayed she'd stay quiet. Back inside, I rushed through the second half of the presentation like my brain was on fire. And then, just as I was walking the clients through a projected margin slide, a small voice echoed from outside the glass wall. "Amandea, the iPad died." Every head turned. "Just one moment," I said, forcing a smile. "Excuse me." I walked out and crouched down. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "can you wait just a few more minutes? I'll get you a snack right after. I'm hungry now." I handed her my phone. No passcode, no limits, no choice. Inside the conference room, the mood had shifted. I could see it in their faces, the polite unease, the side glances. Finance girl with a kid? Not exactly confidence-inspiring. The deal didn't fall through, but it stalled. That alone was enough to make my manager call me into his office that afternoon. "We're all juggling things," he said kindly, "but maybe next time give us a heads up." I nodded, apologized, said it wouldn't happen again. Later that night, I called Clarice. "Do you have any idea what you did today?" I asked. She sounded bored. "You mean helped you practice time management? You humiliated me at work." "I'm sorry," she said flatly. "But that's what family does, Amanda. We show up. We step in. You think I enjoy asking for help? Try being a single mom for once." She hung up before I could answer. 5 minutes later, my dad called. I didn't even say hello. "You should be more grateful," he said, voice like sandpaper. "Your sister's going through a lot. You think raising a child is easy? You get to go to an office and sip coffee. She's doing the real work." I stared at the floor. "Dad," I said slowly, "I'm doing her real work too." He scoffed. "So you babysit a little. That's what sisters are for." That word again, babysit. As if I hadn't already become part of the furniture in Clarice's life. Nights, weekends, diapers, meltdowns, and now midday office drop-ins. I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I looked around my apartment, the career books on my shelf, the empty wine glass, the planner still open on the kitchen table. I had a life once. Now I was an unpaid employee in a system I never signed up for. And the people cashing in on me? They were still applauding themselves for giving me the opportunity to help. The cracks were starting to show. But I didn't know yet how deep they'd go. The party was supposed to be easy. A few speeches, some drinks, old friends reconnecting. I was the matron of honor, and it was for my best friend, Kelly. She was retiring after 30 years in education. This woman had taught me how to parallel park, how to file taxes, and how to survive corporate meetings without screaming. She was more than a friend, she was family. It was held at a boutique hotel ballroom in Bellevue. Cocktail attire, past hors d'oeuvres, jazz trio in the corner. Everyone I'd ever worked with or respected in the last decade was there. I wore a simple black dress and heels, my hair curled for the first time in months. It felt like one of those rare nights where I could just be Amanda, not someone's emergency contact. That lasted exactly 17 minutes. I was helping Kelly's husband check the mic before the toasts when my phone buzzed. "Clarice, can't make it to my friend's thing tonight. You got Julia, right?" Dropping her off in 5. I stared at the screen. No. I called immediately. Voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I was already moving when the front desk called my name over the PA. "Miss Holt, there's a child for you at coat check?" My heels clicked faster than I could think. Down the hallway through the double doors, and there she was, Julia, in mismatched pajamas and glitter sneakers, curled up in a chair beside the unattended coatroom desk, sucking her thumb and looking around like she'd landed on the wrong planet. There was a sticky note on her backpack. "All yours. She's tired. Feed her if she asks." "See." I crouched down. "Hey, sweetheart, where's mommy?" Julia shrugged. She had to go be quiet. I blinked. "What?" She said it's part of her spiritual reset, and she can't talk to anybody. I closed my eyes, counted to 3. Clarice had dumped her child at a formal adult event and ghosted. I texted, called, nothing. Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, Kelly's toast had begun. I was supposed to be up next. I rocked Julia on my knee, now sitting on a bench in the hallway, while she whined about her stomach and refused every snack I had in my clutch. When I tried to stand, she grabbed my arm with both hands and cried. Actual tears, sobbing, screaming. The coatroom door shut behind us with a heavy click, sealing me in a tiny corner of the party like I didn't exist. By the time she calmed down, the clapping inside had already ended. I peeked through the doors just in time to see Kelly hugging someone else, the backup speaker. My name was never called. I missed the photos, the toast, the final group shot of those who meant the most. And no one came looking for me. Half an hour later, Julia had finally drifted off with her head in my lap. I sat there on the dusty floor, dress bunched up, my hair wilting, my clutch forgotten beside someone's puffy ski jacket. That's when I saw it. A faint purple mark on her upper arm. At first, I thought it was a bruise from the meltdown. But when I shifted her sleeve, there were 2 more, small, faded, but unmistakably finger-shaped. My heart pounded. I brushed her hair back gently. Her scalp was greasy. Her nails were caked with dirt. Her stomach grumbled, loud and hollow. "Have you eaten today?" I whispered. She stirred, murmured something about popcorn and toothpaste. That night, after dropping her off at Clarice's apartment, where she didn't answer the door, just buzzed me up from the intercom and yelled, "Leave her inside," I stood in the hallway holding that same backpack. It weighed almost nothing. I opened it. One pair of socks. No food. No extra clothes. A crumpled museum pamphlet. This wasn't just neglect. This was abandonment with polish. Performed and curated like everything else Clarice did, just enough to make her look like she was functioning while someone else did the labor. Me. I finally understood something in that moment. I wasn't just being used. I was being relied on to cover up something worse. Julia wasn't just a burden Clarice wanted to offload. She was a liability Clarice wanted to disappear. And I was the only one who seemed to notice. I texted Clarice once. "Me, we need to talk. I'm serious." No reply. But I wasn't asking anymore. I was making a decision. One I knew would change everything. I wouldn't be her fixer. I wouldn't be her cover story. From now on, I would be Julia's witness. It was snowing the day I bought my plane ticket. Not heavy snow, just that quiet, powdery kind that turns everything into a whisper. I sat at my kitchen counter with a mug of peppermint tea, watching flakes drift past my window. My cursor hovered over the confirm booking button for a solid minute, and then I clicked it. 10 days, Iceland. A solo trip I'd been dreaming about for years. A chance to be alone, truly alone, where no one could find me. No sisters, no toddlers, no LinkedIn announcements. Just glaciers, silence, and maybe some peace. I sent the itinerary to my boss, blocked off my work calendar, and told exactly 2 people, Kelly and my boyfriend Eric, who was currently living in Copenhagen while we sorted out the logistics of being on 2 continents. He was the one who proposed to me there, a tiny hiking trail outside of Ingvellir National Park, no crowds, no ring photos, just us. It was supposed to be our trip again, but he was deep into a project launch and couldn't get away. He told me to go anyway. "You need this," he said. "You've earned it." I believed him. For once I let myself believe it, until the family gathering. It was a Sunday potluck at my dad's house. I wore a sweater I actually liked. I even brought dessert. That was my mistake, showing up like I wasn't already on the chopping block. Clarice made her entrance 45 minutes late, in head-to-toe linen and a headband that looked like it came with a price tag and a hashtag. She was glowing, the kind of glow you only get from self-care retreats and not being responsible for your own child. "Sorry I'm late," she said breezily, kissing air beside my father's cheek. "Had to finalize my booking for Sedona." "Sedona?" I asked. She smiled at me like I was a child asking why the sky was blue. "Yes, spiritual immersion week. Detoxing from technology, yoga, breathwork, and womb healing." "When?" She sat down on the couch and crossed her legs. "Oh, same week you're going to Iceland. Isn't that funny?" I felt my stomach drop. "I'm sorry, what?" Dad clapped his hands together. "Well, it works out perfectly. Amanda, you'll have Julia during that time, right? Clarice said you had the week off anyway." I turned slowly. "You knew I was going to Iceland." Clarice sipped her kombucha like it was a martini. "I assumed you could change it. It's not like you have kids or a wedding or anything. You assumed I'd cancel my trip because you booked a retreat?" She didn't flinch. "You're already doing most of the childcare. This is just 1 extra week." "An extra week," I repeated. "That I told you 6 months ago I was using to get out of the country." Clarice laughed lightly. "Amanda, please. You've always been flexible. That's what makes you so great." I looked around the room. No one was saying anything. Dad cleared his throat. "Amanda, come on. This is what family does." That phrase again. Always served with a side of shame. I stood up. "No." Clarice blinked. "Excuse me." I said no. "I'm not changing my plans. I'm not taking Julia. I'm not doing this anymore." The room went still. My father's voice dropped into that slow, heavy tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable but really meant obedient. "I don't think you understand what's being asked of you." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You want me to give up my life again, so Clarice can play at being overwhelmed while doing nothing." Clarice crossed her arms. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "I'm being done." Dad leaned forward. "Amanda, you're being selfish." That was the moment. The one where something in me detached, like a string finally snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. I smiled, cold and quiet. "I'm selfish," I repeated, "because I booked a vacation that I paid for with money I earned doing a job I worked hard to get, because I said no to a sister who drops her child off like dry cleaning." My voice stayed even. "You can call me selfish all you want, but this time I'm choosing me." The room didn't explode. That would have been easier. Instead, they all just went quiet. Too quiet. Clarice tilted her head, lips pursed like a school principal. "Well," she said softly, "that's disappointing." Dad stood. "You've changed." I looked at him, then at her. "No," I said. "You just finally heard me say no." I left before dessert. Before the rest of the family could pile on. Before they could turn my refusal into some betrayal of bloodlines and dinner tables. But as I drove home through the cold, dark streets, headlights washing over empty sidewalks, I knew something was coming. The calm wasn't peace. It was calculation. They weren't finished. Not yet. I woke up before my alarm. It was the day of my flight, finally. My bag was packed, passport ready. I was supposed to be in the back of an Uber by 6 a.m., headed to SeaTac and from there Iceland. For the first time in what felt like years, I was about to do something just for myself. I hadn't even poured coffee yet when I heard it, a soft knock on the front door. Then another. Slow. Almost hesitant. I checked the clock. 4:52 a.m. My stomach flipped. I pulled on a hoodie and padded to the door, squinting through the peephole. What I saw made my knees lock. Julia, 4 years old, standing in nothing but mismatched pajamas and a coat 2 sizes too small. No shoes, no bag, just a tiny post-it stuck to her chest. I flung the door open. Oh my God, Julia. Her lips were trembling. Hi, Aunt Amanda. I scooped her up instantly, pressing her frozen little body against mine. Her hands were like ice. The sticky note fluttered to the floor. I picked it up with one hand while holding her in the other. Thanks for helping. See, my brain couldn't process it. I slammed the door shut, locked every bolt, and carried her straight to the bathroom. Her teeth were chattering. Her cheeks were red, not from cold but from wind exposure. The thermometer read 30 degrees outside. 30 degrees, and she'd been standing on my porch alone. I ran warm water in the tub, wrapped her in towels, and gave her a granola bar from my carry-on. She ate it like she hadn't had a meal in days. I held it together until she was calm, warm, and safe. Then I pulled up my security camera app, front porch cam, timestamp, 4:03 a.m. There she was, Clarice, in a down jacket and slippers, holding Julia by the hand. She didn't knock. She didn't ring. She walked up, placed Julia in front of my door like a package, took a quick glance at her phone, then walked back to her car. Julia reached for her. Clarice didn't look back. I watched it 3 times. My hands were shaking. Then I hit save clip and texted Eric. Call me. Emergency. He responded within seconds, even from another time zone. I'm coming, he said before I could explain. Don't go to the airport. Stay with her. I'll be on the next flight out. After that, everything moved fast. I called CPS. I told the woman on the phone everything. Every shift I'd covered. Every time Julia was left without food, without notice. And now, left outside in the middle of the night like she was disposable. They didn't hesitate. A caseworker was at my door by 7:15. Julia was still in my bed, wrapped up like a burrito watching cartoons. I didn't tell her anything yet. Just said a friend was coming to make sure everything was okay. When the agent arrived, she took one look at the footage and said, "She's not going back there." She interviewed me, took pictures of Julia's arms, new bruises, thin wrists, cracked skin. I told her about the coat closet drop-off, the night of the gala, the spreadsheet, all of it. I gave them the schedule Clarice had emailed. I showed them the LinkedIn post. By 9 a.m., Julia was placed under emergency protective custody, temporarily with me. By noon, Clarice still hadn't called. Not once. At 12:41 p.m., Eric knocked on the door, bleary-eyed and out of breath from the cab ride. The moment Julia saw him, she lit up like a Christmas tree. You're back. He scooped her up and kissed the top of her head. She okay? He asked me softly. I nodded, but I felt like my throat was full of glass. For now. He wrapped his arm around me. We've got her. You did the right thing. That night, after Julia was asleep, I poured a glass of wine and opened a new folder on my desktop. Title Evidence, Clarice A. Holt. Inside it, I placed everything. The footage, the post-it note, the text threads, the schedule, the code check video, the bruises. Because this wasn't a one-time slip. This was a pattern, and it wasn't going to stay hidden anymore. I missed my flight, but I didn't miss the moment everything changed. This wasn't just about babysitting anymore. It was about a child, and the woman who didn't deserve to raise her. It started with the knock, a hard, angry, fist-pounding knock that rattled the entire front door. Julia had just fallen asleep on the couch, curled next to Eric with a blanket over her legs. I told him not to move. I looked through the peephole. Clarice, tan, hair curled, still wearing her retreat bracelet, and standing behind her, my father. I opened the door just enough to step outside and close it behind me. You gave my kid to the state? Clarice hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut bone. My father stood there, arms crossed like he was holding up the moral backbone of the world. We need to talk. Inside. No, I said. We're not doing this in front of her. You lost that right when you left her outside like a stray cat. Clarice threw her arms up. It was cold, not freezing. She was fine. You left a 4-year-old in 30-degree weather at 4 a.m. with a post-it note, Clarice. Don't pretend that's normal. My father stepped forward. What the hell were you thinking calling CPS? Do you know what this has done to our family? Do you even care? I laughed, quiet, bitter. You think I broke the family? You think this is about you? He leaned in, jaw clenched. You didn't have to make it official. You could have come to us first. You mean the same people who called me selfish for not canceling my trip? The ones who sat in silence while she manipulated and abandoned her child over and over. Clarice's face was red now, not from sun but rage. You think you're some hero? You stole my daughter, Amanda. I stepped back. No, you left her. I just opened the door. She lunged. Not fast, not hard, but enough to shove me backward with both hands. I stumbled. My heel caught the edge of the porch step, and I slammed into the side table next to the door. The glass of water I had set down earlier shattered on impact. Inside, the front door flew open. Eric was already there, eyes locked on Clarice. He stepped between us before I could even sit up. "You touch her again," he said calmly. And I pressed charges. I saw everything. Clarice froze. My dad moved to grab her elbow. "Let's go. Now." Eric helped me up, his hands gentle. I was bleeding just a little from the elbow, nothing major. But my heart was pounding out of rhythm. Clarice pointed a shaking finger at me. "You're going to regret this." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Already have." I turned my back on them, walked into the living room and grabbed my phone. "This is Amanda Holt," I said when the CPS hotline picked up. "The mother showed up and assaulted me. I have a witness." They left, but I want it logged. "Already in the file." The woman on the other end replied calmly. "Would you like to file a restraining order?" I looked at Julia, still asleep, curled up with her stuffed turtle like none of this existed yet in her world. "Yes," I said. "On both of them." When the door finally shut behind them, Eric wrapped his arms around me in the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stood there, arms around his waist, listening to the sound of a quiet house. The storm had passed, but the fire was just beginning to burn. And for once I was the one holding the match. The first thing I noticed was the lock. Tiny scratches near the keyhole like someone had tried and failed to pick it. I stood there on my porch for a solid minute, keys in hand, Julia's lunchbox dangling from my other arm, just staring. It had been 2 weeks since the CPS visit and the restraining orders were filed. Julia was still with me under temporary foster placement. Clarice had made no formal contact. My dad hadn't called. My lawyer told me that silence was usually the calm before the storm. Turns out she was right. The next morning, I found a note slid under my door. It was printed in block letters. "You took what wasn't yours. Bring her back." No return address. No name. Just those words and a small smear of coffee in the corner like someone had rested a mug on it before slipping it into the envelope. The apartment manager checked the cameras. The feed was fuzzy, conveniently glitched out between 1:42 and 1:47 a.m. It didn't stop there. Over the next week, I started getting calls from unknown numbers. When I answered, there was just breathing. Heavy, slow. Then a click. Someone created a fake Instagram account using a photo of Julia. They tagged me in posts. One said, "How's it feel to destroy your own sister?" A manila envelope showed up at my work. No return address. Inside were 10 photos, all of Julia, playing in my front yard, walking with me to the car. One was taken through our kitchen window. My boss escalated to HR immediately. They increased building security. That same day, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Clarice. "You want a war?" Her voice said, light and syrupy. "You got one. Let's see how long you can play mommy before the state realizes you're just a lonely, bitter career girl in a condo with no kids of her own." I sent the recording straight to my attorney and to CPS. The caseworker thanked me. "It's helping us," she said. "She's doing the damage for you." But still, it was getting harder to sleep. Julia clung to me at night now. She wet the bed twice in a week. She barely spoke at daycare. And when I asked her if anything hurt, she just said quietly, "I don't want to go back to the closet." My blood turned to ice. I knew about the coat room incident, but this was different. "What closet?" I asked gently. She pointed to her arm, the one where the bruises happen. I had to step out of the room to breathe. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my email. There was a message waiting, subject line, "Clarice custody file. Please read." The sender was listed as Ray Walker. I didn't recognize the name, but inside was a note. "Amanda, I'm Julia's father. I've been trying to get custody for over a year. Clarice blocked every attempt. I heard what you did. Thank you. I want to help." Attached are records. Use them. Ray. I opened the files. Hundreds of pages. PDFs. Photos. Logs. Missed drug tests. Bank statements showing Clarice funneling Julia's child support into spa retreats and boutique purchases. A handwritten letter from a court-appointed child psychologist saying Julia showed signs of emotional withdrawal and severe boundary confusion. 3 rejected motions for joint custody, each citing Clarice as controlling and uncooperative. I sat there until 2 a.m. reading every word. He tried. He'd document it. And no one had listened. But I would. I printed everything. The next morning, I delivered the whole file to the CPS investigator assigned to Julia's case. I also gave them copies of the harassment, the photos, the voicemails, the scratched locks, the anonymous threats. By the end of the day, they called me back. "We're escalating this," they said. "Thank you." That night, Eric looked at me over dinner. "I don't think this ends until it's official," he said. "What do you mean?" "I mean full custody for her dad. Restraining orders made permanent. No more ambiguity." I nodded slowly. "I'm ready," I said, because now I wasn't just fighting for Julia. I was fighting back. The courthouse smelled like dust and stale coffee. Eric squeezed my hand as we walked through the double doors, his other arm gently resting behind my back. Julia wasn't with us. CPS had arranged for a child advocate to sit with her in a separate room. She was too young to testify, and honestly, I was grateful for that. She didn't need to see what her mother had become. Clarice was already there when we arrived. She wore a sharp navy dress and lipstick too bright for morning. Her lawyer sat beside her, flipping through a binder like this was just another minor inconvenience. Next to them, my father sat stiffly, arms crossed, staring me down like I was the traitor on trial. The judge entered. Everyone rose. It all began so formally, so quiet, like it was just paperwork. Clarice's lawyer made the opening move. Amanda Holt is not the legal guardian. She acted outside her role, manipulated Child Protective Services, and turned a private family disagreement into a public crisis. Then he called my father. He spoke in calm, composed tones. My daughter Amanda has always been ambitious, he said, like it was an insult. She's not maternal. She's never wanted children. This entire thing, this custody drama, it's about control. I felt my nails dig into my palm. Then it was my turn. My attorney played the security footage first. The 4 a.m. doorstep video. The courtroom was dead silent as Clarice appeared on screen, leading Julia by the hand, not saying a word. She dropped her off like a package, then turned and walked away. Clarice stared down at the table. The post-it note was next. The bruises, the coat check incident, the daycare records showing repeated late pickups and missed meals. Then we brought in Ray, Julia's father. He looked exhausted but steady. When he took the stand, he opened with, "I haven't seen my daughter without permission since she was 2. I never stopped trying." He explained everything. How Clarice blocked visitation, missed court order calls, used fake addresses to avoid subpoenas. Then came the receipts, hundreds of them, proving Clarice spent child support on yoga retreats, crystals, and spiritual coaching, sessions that cost more than some people's rent. Clarice's lawyer tried to object. The judge waved it off. Then it was Eric's turn. He stood in front of that courtroom and recounted the morning Clarice shoved me on the porch. Calm, measured, no embellishment, just facts. She left the 4-year-old in freezing temperatures, he said. And when we confronted her, she physically attacked Amanda. I watched the judge jot something down in a thick binder. The final moment came when my attorney showed the social media harassment. The petitioner has faced targeted threats, unauthorized surveillance, and workplace interference, she said, all tied to the respondent or individuals associated with her. When the judge finally looked up, it felt like time stopped. She cleared her throat. This court finds the evidence overwhelmingly in favor of the child's safety being compromised while in the custody of Ms. Clarice Holt. Clarice flinched. Temporary custody is hereby granted to Mr. Raymond Walker, pending full guardianship review. Ms. Holt's parental rights are suspended until completion of court-mandated rehabilitation and psychological evaluation. Additionally, restraining orders will be issued against Ms. Holt and Mr. Gregory Holt, prohibiting contact with Amanda Holt and the minor child. Clarice shot up. "You can't do this. She stole my daughter." The bailiff stepped forward. Clarice turned on me. "You destroyed this family," she screamed. "You think you're so perfect? You'll end up alone just like Mom." I didn't respond. I just picked up my bag, stood, and walked out of the courtroom with Eric beside me. Outside, the sun was blinding. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. There wasn't joy in that moment, just release. Clarice's words echoed in my mind. "You destroyed this family." But the truth was I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped hiding it. And now? It was all out in the open, exactly where it belonged. The first night in Portland, I slept 10 hours straight. No nightmares, no middle-of-the-night jolts, no phantom knocks on the door. Just the kind of sleep where you wake up and have to check the clock twice to believe it's real. It was quiet in the apartment, new floors, new locks, no old ghosts. I transferred to a new finance firm that offered remote work and a better title, senior analyst. Full autonomy. No more side-eye from coworkers wondering why a kid was coloring in the hallway outside a boardroom. Julia was gone now, back with her father, Ray, but I still kept her drawings on the fridge. One was of a house with flowers and a crooked little heart in the sky. She'd drawn Eric and me with huge hands and triangle-shaped bodies. We talked to her once a week, video calls with silly hats and bedtime jokes. Ray sent photos too. Her hair was longer now. She smiled more often. And she never asked about her mother. Eric moved in 3 weeks after I arrived. We didn't plan it. He just never left after his second visit. One day he opened a cabinet and started putting up shelves like it was already his. And that was that. We started decorating the place together, room by room. We'd lay on the floor at night and scroll through furniture websites, arguing about rug colors and light fixtures. He wanted a vintage globe. I wanted a couch that didn't swallow you whole. We compromised with both, and slowly it started to feel like a life. The biggest surprise came in the form of an email. Subject line, from Melody Holt. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. "Amanda, you don't know me, but I'm your father's sister. We haven't spoken in over 20 years. I saw what happened. A mutual friend shared the news. I wanted to tell you, I believe you. Your father was always difficult. I left the family for similar reasons. I see the same patterns. I'm proud of you for breaking them. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Melanie." We ended up meeting at a coffee shop near the Willamette River. She had gray streaks in her hair, a cardigan that smelled like old books, and a voice like a therapist. We talked for 2 hours. She told me stories about my dad, about how he controlled everything, even their mother's funeral. How Clarice had always been the golden one even back then, and how she finally left when no one listened. "You were never the black sheep, Amanda," she said gently. "You were just the first one to walk away." That stuck with me. I didn't have a big revelation or some teary breakdown. But later that night, when I was sitting on the couch folding laundry, Eric leaned over and kissed my temple, and I realized I was okay. Really okay. I still had bad days. I still jumped when the doorbell rang, but the weight was gone. That feeling like I owed someone something just for existing? Gone. At work, I got promoted again. My boss said I had clarity under pressure. I didn't tell her that came from surviving a year where every boundary I had got ripped down and rebuilt from the ground up. I started sleeping again. I mean really sleeping. No guilt, no fake obligations, just rest. And I knew I'd never go back, not to that family, not to that version of myself, because what they called selfishness was actually freedom. I was drinking coffee when the call came in. It was early, not obscenely early, just that kind of morning where everything still feels a little soft around the edges. Eric was still asleep, curled up with one arm under the pillow like always. The window was open a crack, letting in spring air and city sounds. It was Ray. "Hey," he said, voice tight. I wouldn't ask if I had another option. I straightened up on the couch. "What's going on?" He explained that he'd torn a tendon in his shoulder. Surgery was scheduled for Friday. Recovery was at least 4 weeks. His cousin had backed out of helping last minute, and he couldn't juggle post-op meds and Julia at the same time. "She keeps asking about you," he added quietly. I figured I'd see if. "You don't have to explain," I said. "Bring her." He exhaled so hard I heard it through the line. When I told Eric, he didn't even blink. "Of course she's coming," he said, already pulling out his phone to clear space in his work schedule. "We'll get her favorite cereal. And maybe that lizard puppet she liked." She arrived the next evening, suitcase in one hand, drawing pad in the other. Her face lit up when she saw me, and for a second it felt like no time had passed at all. "Do you still have the turtle?" she asked. I smiled and pointed to the shelf. "Front row seat," I said. "He's been waiting." We fell into old rhythms almost instantly. Morning pancakes, coloring on the patio, story time at the library. She'd changed, a little taller, more talkative, but still Julia. Still that soft, curious little kid who liked things exactly where she left them. She called Eric E now, just the letter. He pretended to hate it, but he grinned every time. At night, when the apartment got quiet, I'd find myself standing at her door, just watching her sleep. Sometimes I still couldn't believe any of it had really happened, that a woman had once left this child on my doorstep like she was dropping off trash. It didn't take long for trouble to find us again. Clarice tried to reach out, through someone else of course. A second cousin messaged me on Facebook. "Aunt C just wants to talk. She's sorry. She's changed. Surely you can let her speak to her daughter?" I didn't reply. Instead, I took screenshots, sent them to the CPS caseworker, and flagged them with our attorney. A court order was reissued that same week. No contact. No loopholes. Julia never asked about her mom. Not once. She talked about school, cartoons, what it was like to ride a scooter downhill. But Clarice never came up, and I didn't force it. When Ray recovered and came to pick her up, she clung to me at the door. "I don't want to go," she whispered. "You'll see me again soon," I promised. "You promise?" I held up my pinky. Promise." Ray looked at me over her head. "You've done more for her than anyone ever has," he said. "If you ever want to be part of her life, you just say the word." He meant it. I could tell. 3 weeks later, I got a text with a photo attached. Julia, wearing a paper crown and blowing out candles on a giant pink cake shaped like a book. "5th birthday party this weekend. Hope you and Eric can make it." She asked if you were coming. We did. She ran into my arms the second she saw me, cake icing on her nose and glitter in her hair. "You made it. Wouldn't miss it for anything," I said, picking her up. Later, as she opened gifts and played with her friends, I sat in the backyard with Eric, watching her dance to music that only existed in her head. "She's going to be okay," I said quietly. He nodded. "Because of you." "No," I corrected. "Because we didn't look away. It wasn't the life I expected, but it was the life I chose and kept choosing. Not for Clarice, not for my father, not to prove anything, but for that little girl who knocked on my door at 4 in the morning with a post-it on her chest, and for the woman who finally opened it."